This is Chartered Institute of Teaching Specialists, and I am Constant. I'd like to tell you it's a great day as we start this session. This day, we want to talk about how to create a fantastic learning experience. Remember the last session we had, we talked about the importance of learning experience and their impact on students' learning experience also. But today, we want to talk about how to create that fantastic learning experience. Now, you must understand there are three dimensions of learning experience. Number one is parental, two is peer, and three is academic. It's parental because there are certain learning you cannot superimpose on students from teachers. It has to be what parents only can teach. And there is also learning that comes to a student from his peer. No matter how a teacher tries, it's only his peer that can teach him. And so in case you have a bully in class, that impact can affect not just one student to 10 students. You understand, therefore, that peer learning also affects the total outcome of learning experience of a student. Now, you must understand also that there's something called teaching formats. In our nation today, a lot of teachers use lesson notes. Some of these lesson notes are even being marked by heads of departments who sit down to see if a teacher has well crafted or curated a lesson note. But unfortunately, these lesson notes haven't been marked. That's where the teaching work of the teacher actually stops. And we do hope that your teaching will not just stop at producing a lesson note. For lecturers, they undergo what is called freestyle, and then what we are concerned actually is learning experience design. In making that a note, you have to understand that lesson notes is also called the instructional design or teaching completion strategy. And the instruction design strategy says that it's recommended that you are teaching novice learners, people who just came to the class, they don't know anything. In case someone is moving from class A to class B or class 1 to class 2, when they get to class 2, they are novice learners. So lesson note says that when you are teaching novice learners, you are expected to move from worked examples to partial solutions and then to conventional tasks as their expertise develop. That's what you do as a teacher on day-to-day basis while you engage with with your students. And so it's about fully worked examples, partial solutions, and then conventional tasks. When you do so, according to a conference that was held in 2015 called Innovate and Educate, there is a serious gap when you use design completion strategy to teach. It says that unfortunately teaching would occur, but there is a 53% learning gap. That teaching will occur in the instruction design strategy, but learning wouldn't occur. So if you are a teacher and you are using lesson notes to teach your students, there's a 53% gap, meaning you are only covering 47% of what the student needs to know in order to be able to pass an exam or to be able to reproduce that information in the future. And so I'd like to ask you, who is actually making the student averse? It may be you who is the teacher that is making the students so averse. Of course, the reason why lesson notes is built is because it's built from the theory of called the learning persons. Lesson notes believe that there are about 4 persons in the classroom while you are teaching. Number one, different people call it different names, but I'd like you to use just the 4 that are here. Number one, they believe that there's a pragmatist in class, that he learns through feelings, practicality, and experimentation. So if you're in class as the teacher and you are not the one who feels to teach, you may have to probably lose this person while you teach others. Some people believe that they are activist learners because they are doing mode. They want to engage. Well, they are concrete, they have experience, they are driven by your experience. They are like the people who sells medication to the Hausa person, and the Hausa man says, I don't use them before. So that's the kind of people the activists are. Oh, they are reflectors. They are people you call the watching mode. They are observant and highly reflective. Then we have other people who are theorists. They are the thinkers, conceptual. They use pictures to learn. I'd like to let you know this. As a teacher, if you are a reflector, if you believe these exist, and you are a reflector by learning, you use observation and reflection. If you are teaching and the students in your class don't utilize this option, it means you may teach in the class and learning will not occur. if you're a pragmatist and you are very practical as you're learning, and then you have students who are activists, reflectors, and theorists, it's almost possible that these students will think that you are just making a movie that they are not interested in. Because you are trying to show experiments, you are trying to say, this is how to do it, this is how to do that, but they don't care because they are not within the feeling or within the rapporteur of what is discussed here. That's why we need a balance, we need a different ball game to be able to get at our students for learning to occur. And this is why learning experience design is very, very important. And so you have to understand that in case you are using lesson notes, what lesson notes can produce is assimilation. What freestyle can produce is reproduction. Meaning if you engage a lecturer who uses freestyle to teach, when you are writing an exam, you are going to be able to reproduce. That's the only thing you can do, to reproduce. But learning experience design is focused on not just assimilation, reproduction, it's focused on reproduction and exam success. So we don't want our students to be people who benefit from the recycle of knowledge. Because lesson note people who reproduce the information are recycled persons, and their focus is what? Exam success. I say that again. If your goal is to use lesson notes or freestyle, the end point will be, you will just be recycling your subject, recycling the information because of exam success. So everyone, after passing the exam, might even forget what you have taught. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for that. But we want to now go to the area that is more important, which is learning experience, to dig in deeper. Learning persons are not just four. If you can count this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 learning persons and learning perspectives as to students. There are some people who need experience to learn. There are some people who use imagery, who are reflectors, who are analyzers, who are thinkers, who are deciders, who are actors, and who use initiative to learn. In order for you to balance this, you must understand that for every learning person you see, he might be sharing a character with another. That's why you see there's a dark in the white and there's a white in the dark. And so for someone who uses image, who uses imagination to learn, might just be sharing from a reflector's perspective. What we are saying, therefore, is that learning experience design moves the focus away from instruction and lesson notes towards learning. Instead of focusing on the instruction or the material, our starting point is thinking about the learners and how they will experience what we teach. It's about learning, not the people, the pattern of the learners. It's about how do they experience it. Now you understand, therefore, in learning experience design, this is very, very key. This design in learning experience is very, very key. In order for you to be a teacher who engages students for learning experience, there are 4 critical signposts you need to watch out for. Number 1 is your integrity in class. Number 2 is the interestingness of the subject, or the way you pass the interestingness of the subject. Number 3 is the function of what you are teaching. And number 4 is the form. Now, when in your integrity about the subject, you are not exaggerating information, combined with interestingness, your goal would be to prove the concept. For example, you are teaching quadratic equation and you are saying find S. Now, if it is interesting, but you cannot prove the concept, it means you don't have integrity with our subject. Number next is to look at the form. Integrity with form makes you the eye-catchy teacher. You have become the teacher who can guarantee not just experience, but attention in the classroom. But you see, if integrity does not move with interestingness and form, we start seeing your subject being useless as students. If interestingness does not move with function, the information becomes rubbish. But if it is interesting and it moves with function, we start to go home to go and experiment it. That's why when you were a child, you remember how we put matchsticks inside a hole. As adults, we see people put matchsticks inside a hole and they bang it and makes a loud noise. When we get back home, because of that interestingness and the function, we want to go and do the experiment. And a lot of us get hurt because of that. So in order for students to follow through your teaching, it has to be interesting and it must have function. For example, the function that simultaneous equation teaches is double tasking or multitasking. That's the function of simultaneous equation, for example. The reason why you teach the parts of a speech is not because a speech is actually in parts. The reason why you teach it as parts of speech is because the 9 parts of speech makes a whole person in the use of English language. So the function determines the experience. That said, if you have not understood what I am saying, I'm only trying to tell you that the learning style that lesson notes used to teach, that was just 4 people: the pragmatist, the activist, and the reflector that I did tell you before now, can now be further classified into 8 forms. Number 1, there are students who are verbally learning. That's why if you talk to them loudly, they pick that loud form into their brains, and that becomes what they learn. 2, there are people who are visual. There are people who are musical and auditory. Have you seen students or children learning? When they are learning, they are singing. That's the impact of musical or auditory learning. There are some people who are kinesthetic or physical, and there's even some people who are a combination of 2 or 3 of these kinds of people. There are some who are solitary. Some people cannot learn when you talk. They just allow you to finish your talk, and then they carry the book and read it in a solitary apartment or confinement to be able to learn. There are some people who are social. The talkative, for example, the sanguine, for example, can be someone who is social. He wants to be able to say it unequivocally to be able to know that he's learned. And then there are some people who are logical and mathematical. So all this actually show you the different types of learners that exist. And so how do you create a learning experience when you know that the form of learning or the learning style in your classroom are just more than these 8? Remember, there's a combination. So you can have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, making 4, 1, 2, making 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, making the 6th type of person, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, making the 7th type of person. So these combinations need you to find a middle point where your teaching can be experiential. And that takes us to you knowing the forms of multiple intelligences that exist. This is just another explanation of what I just told you about lessons. For multiple intelligences, there are people who are visual and partial. Meaning, they're highly visual, but partial. They look and they look away. And yet, they're looking away makes them to take information in. What now happens when they look away and you have flashed another vision on the board? There are some people who are what? Existential. It is whatever they know before they try to learn to join. Next, there are people who are logical maths. So there are different kinds of learning patterns that exist in the world. But you still, as a teacher, have to create an environment where learning experience can occur. And so, in order for us to utilize learning experience, we must move from association to what? Associativeness. You must learn to make your students to associate their learning with their environment. Number 2, you must move freestyle to what? Reproduction. And then you must move, learning experience is about career pathing. People came to class not to pass maths. They came to class to know if maths is what will lead them to their own destiny. In case maths didn't lead them, English should. In case English didn't, biology should. And so, learning experience design is what guarantees career path. Someone say career path. And then therefore, whether associativeness, reproduction, or career pathing, the goal of learning experience is not recycling, is what? Derivative learning. Meaning whatever a person learns, whatever the student learns in your class, they can derive benefits for learning from you. You remember something in economics called derived demand? Something that you buy because of what you can use it to reproduce or to produce. And so learning is for derivative capability. Meaning today I'm able to teach you because I am now a derivative of the learning that I've undergone in the past. And so, for the purpose of learning experience design, let's look at the uses. Number 1, the process of learning either formally or informally, any effort that may be captured as evidence or credit. Well, this is not so important. Let me therefore discuss with you what are the things to consider, the questions to consider when engaging in your learning excellence or learning experience design. Number 1, You will understand this, therefore, that the first three questions here are a focus on lesson notes. The first says, what do I want students to know and be able to do at the end of the lesson? That's what lesson notes do. In case you are using a lesson note, that's basically what it does. So it means learning experience is not a total cancellation of lesson notes. Lesson notes actually began the teaching experience, but it didn't end it. Number two, it says, what part of the core concept or program of studies will students be addressing through this lesson? Number three, it says, what connection to real life will this learning have? Remember, I talked about derivativeness of learning. Now, these are the three basic things that lesson notes ask. But unfortunately, it stops here. Now, number four is where learning experience design begins. Number four says, what will I do to cause this learning to occur? Teachers hardly ask these questions. What must I do? How should I make this presentation? How should I put this information across to students for the learning to occur? Number five, it says, what will the students do to facilitate their own learning? In case this learning did not occur up to 84 to 85%, how do I engage the students so that their peer time will not be peer pressure, will be peer learning? How or what must I do for students themselves to facilitate their own learning? It goes to number 6 to say, how will I access, therefore, to find out if this learning actually occurred? Remember, there's a statement that says, if the student says he hasn't learned, the teacher hasn't taught. So the question, therefore, should be, how do I access to find out if this learning actually occurred? And then the number last is, how do I guarantee after-school commitment to the lessons? Guaranteeing after-school commitment is when the student takes your learning to the house and it can prompt him to want to open his book and read by himself. And so these are the critical questions that a learning excellence or learning experience design takes to cognizance before formulating how to go to class to teach. Number one, again, let's take it. Number one is, what do I want students to know and be able to do after the end of the lesson? And for you who is a teacher in Nigeria today, that's called your lesson or your learning objective. Number two is, what part of the core concept or program of studies do students should be addressing through this lesson? And that's what they call areas of concern or areas of concentration. And then next is, what connection to real life will this learning have? A lot of teachers avoid this. They don't care what connection to real life this is. And I can let you know that if there is no connection to real life, all the forms of learners that we have spoken about here and there will no longer be in the classroom, because you are just teaching ahead of people. Number four, we said, what will you do as a teacher in order to cause the learning to occur? It's a time where you have to go against statements like, you don't do that in my class. Are you silly? Am I the one you are talking to? You are making a noise there. Stand up! Go out of my class! Those are the things that don't make learning to occur, because they are not in a military regiment. Am I correct? And then you have to understand that, what will you do to find out if learning actually occurred? You are not going to be the teacher who goes to say, like my old teacher used to say, if you fail, you fail. My own is to come to class and teach you. If you learn, that's your business. And if you don't learn, that is your business. We see at the exam hall. That is no longer the way to teach in the 21st century, a time that we call the Gen Z generation. Next is, how do you guarantee that if this student goes home, he's not going to throw his book out and start the play as usual? That what you taught is so engaging that he's willing to continue by himself. Ladies and gentlemen, the learning experience quadrant, these questions will take us to the learning experience quadrant. Students form 4 continuum in learning. Number 1 is called the active and the experimentation person. You remember we talked about the active and the experimentation person? You remember? Now, there's also a reflective and the observative person. Now, there's a concrete experience, because in case you want to be a teacher who is highly accommodative in class, whose learning is accommodative in class, you must combine experimentation plus what? Concrete experience. And so statements like this of feeling, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Now, if you don't understand me, it's my responsibility to bring this clearer for you. That statement enough can guarantee that the people who are active and experimenting with concrete experience have been taken care of. Number two is to understand people who are convergent learners. They think and they do. Convergent learners will have issues of abstract learning as well as active learning. Remember, it's abstract and what? Active. In order for you to look for abstract and active learners, you use perception. These are people you tell you will be great, you will be very, very powerful in society, things are going to work well, I can see precedents in this class, not because those statements mean what you are teaching, but because they perceive to learn. And I am teaching you as a student, in case you are a teacher, I am teaching you as a student how to be confident in the use of English language. Did you just hear what I said? I am teaching you how to be confident in the use of English language. For those of you who teach maths, let me let you know, you can say things of this nature. Without maths, you can't be first. The person who has the first position, mathematics, is the one that promoted him to maths. To first. Because how do you know a person took first, if not through maths? True, in case you are going to be the richest man in society, you should at least be able to count your money before someone counts it. It takes maths to be able to be the best, to know that you are the richest in society. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's what teaching is all about. I leave you to this. You can view this and be able to read on how to use this continuum. And there are people who are assimilators. You have to move from abstract to reflective. There are people who are divergent learners. You have to move from a feeling to what? Continuous process of learning. And so all this put together lets you know that in your capacity of learning, there are 10 critical skills you need to possess in order for you to be someone who makes learning experience to occur. I will take you these other very important ones in the future, and I thank you for what you have learned today. Thank you, and God bless you.